this week?
Great. He's fantastic.
You call me drinking water, my little pre-show sip of water. My name is Scott Stanfield. This is Modern Longevitarian. Welcome to episode 84. Thank you for watching on Spirituality Gone Wild. Thank you for watching on LinkedIn as well. Today's episode is how to bring your emotional guidance system online with CEO of Vibeonix, Kristi Holt. She's also here in Utah. We got dumped on snow. I don't know if she got any snow down there. We'll talk about it when we get on the show, but we finally got that 2 feet or 1 foot of snow overnight that we have here, 7,000 feet here in the Rocky Mountains of Utah. Harvard Business Review posted on Instagram just the other day that 85% of people surveyed said their general well-being has declined since the start of COVID-19. 50% of those people, they said that their decline has been just in their mental health. The longer I do this, the more that I coach people, the more I realize that the quote by Bruce Lee, "The body follows the mind," is true. The more I do this, the more I coach, the more I focus on mindset before anything else, before sleep, before diet, before exercise, because the body follows the mind. Your software drives your hardware. The way you think determines how you act, you feel, and your body composition. And even as Joe Dispenza, I didn't even type this in here, but Joe Dispenza says you are the placebo. And I talked about that in the show just last week about the placebo effect. It's super crazy. If mindset, lifestyle, health span coaching is something that you're looking for, instead of going and Googling somebody, just reach out to me, send me a DM, or go to modernlongevitarian.com/coaching and set up your free discovery call with me, Scott, the Modern Longevitarian. Let's talk about this week's show. Tomorrow, we're going to do, Lace and me, my daughter, and I are going to do another live cooking show. We're going to be featuring some plant-based cheese, butter, and cream from BioLife. They sent me this care package. I posted it. So just scroll through my feed on LinkedIn. You can find where I showed everything that they sent me, like plant-based cheddar, plant-based butter, non-GMO, plant-based cheeses, 2 types of cheeses, and also a cream. So I'm super excited about doing that and playing around with those and what we can do with that on live. On Thursday, we're going to have Sean Wells. Sean is a biochemist, dietitian, sports nutritionist, and formulation scientist known as the world's greatest formulator. Do not miss that show. Do not. And on Friday, Saf Buxey from London, a human behavioral consultant, professional speaker, and fellow Spirituality Gone Wild broadcaster. He's also a recovered addict, an abuse victim, and above all, a survivor. This week is off the charts with amazing guests. So let's get to today's interview with Kristi, CEO of Vibeonix. Kristi, let me switch over here real quick. Hey, welcome to the show.
Hi, Scott. How are you doing today?
I'm doing amazing today. I know that I got a coaching call right after this, and then I'm going to be like shoveling a foot of snow. I don't know how much you got down there, but
well, I'm on the other side of the Wasatch Mountains, and we have so much snow. It's interesting, Sean Wells, that's going to be on your show this week. He's a very dear friend. He's brilliant. He and I have been talking about how much snow they've received in Texas.
Right.
So Texas is actually shut down. They got a flurry.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, they got a flurry.
Snow
right?
everywhere.
Yeah. I'm from South Carolina originally. And if they forecasted a 1/4 inch of snow, there was 2 things that happened. Schools got canceled. All right. And the second thing, everybody rushed to the grocery store to buy all the bread and milk. I have no idea why. Right. But that's what happened. Right.
Necessities, Scott.
Yeah.
All else fails, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And, my parents had come to visit so many times and, during the winter a lot, or during spring break, really, which is kind of still the winter. I think Bear Grylls from Man vs. Wild said, there's only 2 seasons in the Rocky Mountains, winter and July. Right. and people say there's only 2 seasons here, the winter and construction season. Right.
Right.
Because they try to get so much construction done when the snow's not falling. Right. So is those things. But my parents, it would snow like 6 inches. Are we snowed in? I'm like, no, we're not snowed in. All right. It snowed a foot. We snowed in. No, it snowed 18 inches. No. And then one year they were here in April. It's probably about 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago. And we got 48 inches in like 48 hours. Yeah. It was like nuts. And I'm like, okay, we're officially snowed in for a minute here. It's like, it's going to take a while to get us, like to keep like moving all that snow. And because our driveway is about 100 yards long, right? So you think about the cubic feet of, 48 inches of snow, right? That you're moving. It's pretty crazy. So, today's show, we titled this as, and we did an amazing discovery call. And I even put this in the comment on LinkedIn, is that we should have recorded that. That would have been like, just put that as a podcast and let that be out in the world. But but here we are, how to bring your emotional guidance system online.
Right.
And you do a lot of that with your work with Vibeonix. So maybe if you can talk about what Vibeonix is, we can kind of like lay a foundation for that. And then we can go about pulling the thread a little bit about, emotional guidance system.
Well, I love that. First off, this has been a hot topic for me personally my entire life. But why I decided to found a company like this was really around emotional intelligence and how and why is emotional intelligence so valuable, especially when it's so critical in being successful in the world today. Yet with being so critical, why do we not talk about it more? Or why do we not know, especially when the first step is self-awareness? So that is where your emotional guidance system comes in. And are you paying attention to it? Are you paying attention to your own emotional landscape and the role it's playing in your life? So many people are wanting a certain type of life, and they do it mostly because they just want to feel good, right? At the core of everything we do, people usually do it because they want to feel better. Like they go to work because they want to feel better, more motivated and confident with their family, or they go to these weekend retreats because they want to feel better, or they're listening to this podcast because they want to learn something that will make them feel better. So most people are motivated to feel better, yet pay so little attention to how they feel, which is shocking. So the first step to figuring out your emotional health and your emotional wellness is your self-awareness. So that's where Vibeonix comes in. We're able to quantify emotional wellness through voice analyzing AI, which is a lot of mumbo jumbo for we can help you see how you feel. It can be a very daunting question when you say, how am I feeling? Well, usually people are like, fine. And how much is the finiteness out there, right? Everyone's fine. But are you really? Like, what does that even mean? So we help you see emotions, 20 different emotions that maybe you're not only happy, like happiness and love are 2 different emotions, right? Or motivation or courage or acceptance. And then you also look at some of those resistant emotions that kind of keep you stuck. That's maybe more like loneliness, which is huge right now, or anger. How can we use anger to increase motivation versus feeling stuck? So what we do is give a really good self-awareness around all 20 emotions that we focus on. And then also like how they're playing out in your life. Am I more proactive or reactive? And proactive is like open to new outcomes and ideas, where reactive is you're in the habit of that mind-body reaction to what you're feeling. So you're predicting your future from the past, which means you're just creating those experiences over and over. Yes, that is a Joe Dispenza idea. Joe Dispenza was, he largely influenced our product. When you were talking earlier about Joe, I was like, oh, I love that man.
Yeah, me too.
But you know, the language of the mind and the language of the body, your emotions are the language of the body. And thoughts are the language of the mind. So again, understanding the landscape. Other things that would help you understand, other than proactive, reactive, how you're expressing or suppressing your emotion, that and can you do it in a healthy way? And that's really where the emotional intelligence comes in. So I could just go on and on about our product, but the core of our product is to really help your self-awareness become more obvious. And there's one thing that you started talking about with Harvard. The study with Harvard, they proved that 95% of people think they're self-aware, where only 15% actually are. So that's the first critical step to emotional health and emotional intelligence. We've got to get better at recognizing ourselves. And then self-management is that next step, empathy, and then social interaction. And as we increase all those, our life improves. But what I would really say at the core of who I am and what I believe is kind of that emotional guidance system that we talked about earlier. Like, why do we have emotions? And what is our relationship to them? And how can we look at them differently so those emotions serve us, not keep us stuck?
Right. Yeah. It's, I don't even know where to go next, right? Normally, yeah, it's, you know, I've interviewed thousands of people over the years, like for jobs, right? And so I pull from that skill and transfer this over. People ask me like, how do you do this? I'm like, I've interviewed people all the time. And so I start with like an intro and then I just start going down trails, right? So I want to say this, right? My favorite quote by Joe Dispenza is that we have 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day and 95% are the same as the day before. Right. And that's what you talked about, the reactive part where we're doing the same thing over and over again. We're not changing anything. And
so what do you think changes that, Scott? Because I like where you're going, but if you're repeating the past all the time, at what point do we create a new future? And can we respond differently to the habit of the body, which is your emotional body, to create a different future? So, do you mind if I go on this for just a second?
Go right ahead. I just buckled up. I put my seatbelt on. I'm ready for the ride. Right? Yeah. Right.
Well, there's like 10 places we could go with this, but really you have to be aware of how you feel, because your feelings are the placebo, right? So you're having thousands of thoughts, but what makes those thoughts become your reality? Emotion, because it's energy in motion. So what you emotionally connect to becomes that reality. And now you're starting to experience that thought in reality. Does that make sense? So what's really cool is when you start to think about, well, how am I feeling? What are these emotions? That's how you can start to change the outcome of those thoughts. So when we understand that, the extreme awareness, but think about like driving a car, okay? Like when you got your driver's license.
Right.
When you started driving a car, you had to literally think about every step. Turn on blinker, look behind, change gear, press the brake slowly, not too hard, 10 and 2. And there's all of these ways to learn this new skill, right? Well, your emotions are the same way. Eventually, you're going to be doing it just like you do it now, but you're not thinking of all those intricate steps to make sure you create something different. Okay, so it's like driving the car. What are those steps? How can I bring my own awareness to those steps and begin to practice them so I can have a different response to the habit of the body?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know, we're blind to this. You know, we're blind to the self-awareness because I think it stems back to, you know, our first 6 years of our lives, right? We're in theta. We record everything we see. We see how our parents act or who people we're around, right? If you're not around your parents or grandparents or something happens to you, then all of a sudden around 7, the switch is flipped and now you're not in theta. You're not this hypnotic state. And now you're programmed to play out these patterns for the rest of your life. And I was taught TFAR, which is thoughts, feelings, actions, results, right? I've heard other people call it BEAR, belief, emotions, actions, results. So you would ask me, how do you change this, right? Well, I hate to bring up math and algebra, right? Because a lot of people are like, I don't want to do this. But, and even Einstein said insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So you have to change your result, right? So if you go, all right, okay, I was 40 pounds overweight, right? More than once. And we don't need to get into talk about me being a fat vegetarian at age 40, right? But it's like I changed the vision, right? I wanted to be in the best shape of my life at age 40, right? Yeah. I turned 49 next month and I've been able to keep the weight off, and I had to find a way to change it. So I had to see a different result, right? Then that means that I had to change what my action was, right? And to change my action, I had to change my emotions, right? Or my feelings, right? I had to change what I was thinking, right? Those things. And so the biggest thing that made the difference was I went from eating 3 meals a day with snacks in between to fasting for 20 hours a day, right? Back in the beginning part. So I changed my beliefs, my thoughts around when I should be eating food, not what I was eating, but when, right?
Yeah.
I had to get control of my emotional stress related eating, right? I had to put that in figure out how to wrestle with that bear, right? Then because my action changed, my results changed, and my results have been the same for 9 years for that. And so that's what people don't really realize, is that you asked me the question. That's really the thing, is you have to change the result. Then you have to reverse engineer what your thinking is that determine your emotions, that determine your actions, that determine what your result is, right?
That's exactly what we talk about. In fact, we measure that. Your thoughts and actions. Which ones are in flow and which ones are resistant, and where you're out of your own alignment. So there's a little bit different verbiage. Like we talk about being in alignment, which is, really clear about, does my thoughts, does my feelings, and my action align with my desire?
Right.
Another thing that I would love to talk about that helps us, because like you said, we talk about those formulas all the time, right?
Right.
So how we measure through the voice, all the things that I've been telling you about through Vibeonix, is through frequency.
Okay.
Now, so we can bring this to a conversation around frequency and energy. Until now, a lot of people see it as a woo-woo, right? But we can measure it and we can track it and we can see it, giving quantifiable information to make these changes. Because a lot of the times you're like, well, I think positive all the time, so why is my life not more positive, right? Or, well, and my feelings, and I don't know how to get my thoughts aligned with my feelings. So this has helped me. So every thought and every emotion has a frequency.
Right.
Okay? Well, what we know about frequency is like attracts like. So a like frequency attracts a like frequency.
Right.
So when we understand that it is its own frequency, you can't get there from there. So what that means is, if I am feeling angry, no matter how much I try, I can't get from anger to happiness. Okay? Because sometimes it either feels like a quantum leap, right? And I don't know how to get there. No, you can. So it's about taking little steps of awareness to change the frequency. Okay. So you attune to what you actually want. So what you want comes. And this is what Joe Dispenza talks about a lot. It's attuned to the new emotion. And so picture a channel, right? Like I don't know, you and I are old enough that we know there's radio channels that used to exist. People today
it was tough to get it, right? Yeah.
And right now, think about it like a cell phone. Okay.
Right.
I want to call Scott. This is the frequency I'm going to dial. And guess who answers? Scott. So emotions and thoughts are the same way. If I want to dial happiness, I need to dial happiness. If
Right.
I want to dial joy or love, or that I have to attune to that frequency. Okay. And then everything that's on that frequency, I get to hear.
Right.
I get to listen to, I get to enjoy it, and it becomes your way of life. So really it's about taking that intention to change your thoughts and your feelings to the frequency that will give you that outcome.
Right.
Is I kind of like thinking about it that way, because then it's
Right.
like, oh my gosh, so it is math, by the way. Frequency,
Right.
energy is all mathematical equations, which we could get into the whole idea of like science and spirituality and where do they fit. I mean, we could have all kinds of
Right. Right. We could get into sacred geometry and all kind of, stuff like that, and pyramids and, ancient aliens and go down that trail. No, but
I think
um
the biggest takeaway from that is your emotion is energy in motion.
right.
Okay.
Right.
And every thought and every feeling is that energy in motion.
Right.
What you're putting in motion is what shows up in your reality.
Right. So the way that and this may be the woo version or it may not, but this is the way that my coach Malia Brown explained it to me.
Mhm.
It's a reflective universe. Okay. And so what you said, frequency matches frequency, like attracts like. If what you put into the world, you're going to get reflected back to you. Right.
Yes.
And so feel free to use that, right? Reflective universe. Right. But it's so amazing, right? You could be agitated, stressed, you could, whatever those 20 different things that you have, kind, joy, happiness,
Yep.
right? You go and, I don't know, you're in the checkout line at the grocery store, right? And you're buying some, organic produce, right? Whatever you're getting, right? I don't know. You could be splurging on a Valentine's Day. For me would be like a keto chocolate bar, right? Or some, something like that, right? And I have to put these healthy things in there, right? Because it's just who I am, right? But it's like you can, be frustrated that you got to stand 6 feet away. You got to have a mask on. You got to do all these things, right? Or you could start with kindness, right? And you could put kindness towards that person who's having to work an 8-hour shift wearing a mask, getting paid $15 an hour, right? And
Right.
be kind to them and make their day, and then kindness will come back, right? So that's the thing that you could do there. And that's just a real life example,
Well, I love that example. And I was like writing down some things because I wanted to respond back.
Right.
Two things I would say is what we can learn about exactly what you were saying, like where is our own emotional state, because that's what we're going to experience. So if you notice that if you bring frustration to a checkout counter, then frustration's there, and they'll either meet you in that frustration or through their own awareness attune to theirs, and then you get another choice to attune to that, so that kind of bounces off of each other. When we talk about emotions, there's one thing that I would challenge each of us to consider. When I say the word angry, how does that make you feel? Right? When I say the word confusion, how does that make you feel? What is your relationship to those words, and how do you view those state of beings? Okay. So for example, it's really about your relationship. If we can look at anger, and instead of being frustrated or angry about our anger, right? And I could tell you a real quick story. We were on a whole mastermind with a group of executives. And this one executive had her team on there. And she shows up after she took our assessment, and she was like, well, I don't really like this assessment. I don't like it at all. And we're like, okay, tell us about it. And she goes, well, it says I'm angry. I healed my anger. I quietly sat there and I said, and I knew I was she was gonna love me or hate me with the next thing that came out of my mouth, but I decided to go for it. And I said, maybe offline we can discuss your anger towards your anger. And she sat there, and I was like, oh, here it goes. What is she gonna do? She covers her eyes and she's like, oh my gosh, it's right in front of me. I've been so angry that it said I was angry.
Right, right.
And she felt anger for so long that she didn't even realize how present it was in her vibe, right? So when she was going to work, one of her coworkers actually said, I am so glad to hear that you're not even aware of that, because I think you're angry at me all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was
Right.
so profound just in that little thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It takes us back to, she was like, well, I'm so tired of being angry. And it was like, what if it's not about taking anger out of the scale of, think about like each emotion like a scale, like a piano scale, right? What if
Right.
the goal isn't to take out F sharp because we don't like the way it sounds by itself, right? It's just to come in back into harmony with the song that we're playing, because we're meant to feel F sharp. We're meant to feel anger, but what is it actually telling us about our thoughts and our beliefs versus getting angry that we feel angrier? So,
Right.
for example, if you're feeling confusion, we'll take it to a different emotion, like, oh, I'm just feeling so confused. You have to then consider, well, what am I thinking about?
Right.
And so what the emotion is telling you is something is off in your thought process that is actually hurting you.
Mm-hmm.
So then what am I thinking about? Well, I need to know where this, or I'm not clear about this. So then it's really telling you, well, then go get clear about that so you can feel better.
Right. Right.
Right? Go ask more questions, go get some clarity, or accept what it is and shift the way you're looking at it.
Right.
Really just how you're going back full circle, how you're responding to those automatic behaviors and how you're either reacting or choosing to respond and consider a new outcome.
Right. 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 I'm going to tell you a quick story, and then we got a comment that came in and I think that fits perfectly into what the Vibeonix is and all those things. I think we can expand upon it. So,
Great.
I was the restaurant general manager of the Ruth's Chris Steakhouse here in Park City, right? And it's in a hotel. And supposedly, how it was supposed to work is if another employee wanted to come eat in the restaurant to get their 50% off on their food, for them and one other person, their director was supposed to contact me, and then I was supposed to give approval for that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and you would imagine if we're slow on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and we're going to make most of our money on a Friday and Saturday, why would I use up a booth that can seat 6 people for 2 people to have that are employees to have a romantic dinner and get 50% off? How much money am I losing, right? Because the most important thing, most people don't think about this, the most expensive thing in a restaurant is an empty seat.
Yeah.
Right? Is an empty seat. If you're going to get $70 off that seat and there's 6 of them, right? Think of the $400 that are going to come in sales from that table. And I got 2 people that are going to get 50% off. I got $70 on that table, right? Coming in, right? Right. So I'm losing money in the opportune time for us to make money. So not only is it impacting the server's tip, right? It's impacting top line revenue. It's potentially impacting all the managers' bonuses, right? Yeah. It's, because we're not hitting P&L budgets and things like that. I would get livid, right? I would fly off the handle. I'd go to the host stand and I'd be like, how did this person get in here? I didn't approve them. I'm here 6 days a week. I should know. And then, and all this stuff, right? And then, so this happened multiple times, right? And then all of a sudden, my lead hostess, Ashley, just amazing. Yeah, she was 20 at the time when she became my, lead hostess and executive assistant. Really, we couldn't make her manager because she wasn't 21. She couldn't manage alcohol in the state of Utah and things like that, right? So she actually would scan to see if any employees were in the reservation books to let me know at 2:00 in the afternoon when she got to work. Because she told me one day, like a month later, she goes, "You don't like surprises." And it was talking about lack of self-awareness. So she knew that if I got surprised, it was going to trigger this emotional response that I was going to be storming around the restaurant, all pissed off behind the scenes, and it would affect everybody. So she was trying to protect everybody from me in a way, right?
Absolutely.
And so here I am. I've read Emotional Intelligence 2.0. I've read, Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman, right? I've, listened to Simon Sinek about creating safe environments for people that work for you, right? And all these things. And I think that I'm walking around this restaurant being totally self-aware, and I'm the one getting emotionally hijacked. And a 20-year-old girl is trying to protect everybody from my emotion, my lack of self-awareness. Right.
Well,
And
and self-management, right? So when something
right.
does happen, not being able to control the emotional state and get into your logic, but the emotion starts to run versus the logic that can come in. And the empathy, right? Hey, you must not
Right.
understand these things. Let me help you understand it, why this decision matters.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. So here's the thing. I had developed, elevated self-awareness around other things, but that was in my blind spot. I didn't realize it. Right. So I was part of the 70%, 85% think they are, 15% are in that particular segment. And I still struggle with that a little bit today. Right.
Well,
Where so it's like an Achilles heel in a way, almost like if your golf swing is screwed up in one way and you're always going to hit slices, you're always going to struggle with that fault. Right. So it's kind of there. Right.
well, if you don't mind me saying a couple things.
I don't
First,
mind at all.
our society doesn't nurture the importance of emotional intelligence. Okay.
Right.
How many times did your parents say, Scott, how are you feeling?
Never.
Or how many times did they say, hey, I noticed that you displayed your emotions by kicking and screaming. Like, do you want
Right.
to talk about it? They're just trying to get you to stop and not do that behavior.
Right.
But they never come back to, I don't want to say never, those are not, those are extremes.
Right.
So
Right.
I have 4 children. Okay.
Mhm.
The
Right.
number one question that I have learned to help them with their own emotional landscape is I don't ask them, hey, what do you think about that? Very rarely, because they cut that down. They're taught that all day in school. They're taught that all the time with their friends. They're taught that everywhere outside of our home, mostly.
Right.
I always ask them, how are you feeling today? I'm fine. Can you have a different word? Like, tell me why you're feeling that way.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you feeling and why? If we started asking each other those questions, think about even around mental health right now. There's so many people that are really trying to internally figure all this out, but have not been given the tools. So the good news is it's a skill. It is a skill that you can learn through that first step of self-awareness. That's why what we do at Vibeonix we feel is so powerful, because it helps you not have to figure out 20 different emotions and start to identify what they feel like and start to name them. It really does it for you, so you can start to go, oh, that's what that feeling is.
Mm-hmm.
I'll share a personal story. I was really struggling this last year, and I had all these emotions that I could identify. Betrayal. I felt betrayed. I felt like loss. I felt like I had lost something. I also felt confused. I didn't understand why. I could find those 3 words, but as I'd say them out loud, it wasn't that thing that I was like really struggling with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at the time we were developing our new product, so I was like, all the developers will know that it's me. So I first had to overcome this idea that emotions are bad, or that something was wrong with me if I wasn't emotionally sound, right? If I wasn't positive and up to par and all these things that you would expect from your leader, I had to be very vulnerable and just say, I'm off, something's wrong, and I need to figure out what it is. So I went and took our test, and my highest score was loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat at my table and just sobbed. I'm married to my best friend and soulmate. I have 4 kids. I work with my friends. I have people around me all the time. Yet I was feeling so lonely, right? So I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Of course, we have our content that I wrote when I didn't feel that way, so I could go and read through it. And what it really was lack of connection, because I started to isolate as a CEO and a founder, because I needed to have all the answers. And there was things I couldn't answer. There was things I didn't know what to do. We're going into COVID. I don't know what's going on. There was so many uncertainty that caused me to withdraw. And when I realized it was loneliness, what I did is I sat my entire team down and I said, hey, My biggest score today on our assessment was loneliness, and I need help through this.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of things I don't know, and I'm finding myself withdraw from the entire team. Does that feel true to any of you? And every single one of them raised their hand.
Right.
And I said, so I'm going to ask you, can you reach out to me, or can you call me instead of text me? Like, I could really use your help through this.
Mm.
My team showed up. We grew so close from that type of courage and vulnerability. Brene Brown talks about this all the time, how to have courage and vulnerability with your team.
Mm-hmm.
And I got what actually helps solves that, which is connection and a safe place to move through it. And I got to open up about my own emotional state, and I had support, which was huge. So I think that self-awareness turning into self-management and empathy are such big steps, and we can learn this. It is a skill you can learn. You can start going to the gym and get that muscle stronger. That's how emotional intelligence is. It's just bringing awareness that something doesn't feel good. I need to ask more questions, and I need to nurture myself through this for understanding, not judgment.
Right. I mean, we could go so many ways. I mean, empathy is the common thread in everything: relationships, marriages, being a parent, being a leader, all of those things. And I've talked about that multiple times. I did an interview for the Restaurant General Manager podcast that I don't do anymore with Marvell Allen, and we talked about emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
She's spoken at UC Berkeley on this and is a coach and consultant, and was a server back when she was in grad school, right? So we talked about emotional intelligence and restaurants and those things. And the one thing I learned from that is that we're not supposed to suppress our emotions. We're supposed to actually express our emotions, right? But the thing that made a difference for me in building a gap between my response versus a logical, reasonable reaction was meditation, doing transcendental meditation.
Mm-hmm.
It allowed me to sit in the pocket, so to speak, and go, okay, this is what I'm experiencing. Now, what am I going to do with it? Right. And do this versus just whatever comes out. We've got multiple comments. Steve Weber from the American Gumption Morning Show, my friend. I've been on his show 3 times. He's been on my show. Kristi's wise and has learned well from Dr. Joe. Bravo. Debbie Garcia, founder of the Spirituality Gone Wild Network. She's tuning in today. She said, excellent. Bernard Kiwi, he's from London. He does a lot of training for businesses on LinkedIn. This is a fascinating discussion, valuable topic. And this is the one that I wanted us to respond to and really kind of do. And I don't know who it was because they came through Facebook users. So most of the time people don't know how they sound.
Can I first off, I love these comments. Any of you working in this space and helping through with emotional intelligence and want to use Vibeonix as a tool, because it's an objective data that you can show somebody. It's not like, hey, this is what I think you're feeling. Let me help you see that. It's actually, hey, this is some objective data that we can look at together. Right. But you're right. Most people don't know how they sound, and bringing awareness that your voice literally is transmuting your story. It's transmuting your frequency. Mm-hmm. And so you are, and is that what you want to transmute when you know that what you put out comes back, right? So that you really start to consider, how am I saying this? So when we're measuring the frequencies, we're also analyzing the tone, right? So how many times has someone said, I love you? Yeah. And then said, I love you. Same words, but different tone, right? And it actually has a different frequency. That second one would not show up on our scale as love, right? It would show up on our scale as maybe frustration. Like I said, So it's really, I love that comment, because if we could really put together what is coming from us is actually us, a version of us that is true, and then that is what we're experiencing. So the grand scale of that is everything starts with you. Mm. It is not anyone else. It is every reality you experience is you. Right. And I think we could, if our society could take radical accountability for our reality, that's what that means. Everything starts with you.
Right.
And
Right.
that is where you have your freedom, because you can choose and control that. And that is your freedom. So many people
Right.
want to say, no, it's someone else's fault that I feel this way. Oh, Scott, you'll like this story, because remember those 4 kids? I have
Mm-hmm.
2 girls, and one of them comes running in and she's like, Mom, Ansley makes me so mad. And I point to her on her little shoulder and I'm like, well, good, then I'll make you happy. She's like, Mom, you can't just make me happy. And I'm like, well, then she can't just make you sad.
Right.
And it's really understanding, like, people don't make you feel anything. It's
Mm.
your beliefs and it's your thoughts that are allowing those emotions to be present based on what you think you heard.
Right.
Whoa, that is so cool.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, that's so profound, right? Because then you're like, wait a minute, I don't have the relationship that they do with what they're expressing, and I don't need to take that on. And I can have a different relationship to what they just said. And that's where choice and accountability and acceptance and radical acceptance comes into play.
Yeah. It's so important. We don't really realize that. I mean, we have this, internal, we can choose, right? Joe Dispenza says you can choose your emotions, right? You can choose that.
Yeah.
And so I've been, since the first of the year, I've been, writing down most days, like my affirmations, right? And
Mhm.
one of them is, I'm so happy and grateful that I wake up each morning on purpose, with energized joy and a smile, right?
Yeah.
And I'm, typically one of those night owls that wakes up in the morning, drags himself to the French press to make his first cup of coffee before anything else, right? And then about day 3, all of a sudden I woke up with a smile on my face and I was like, where'd that come from? How did I wake up? And I'm like, wait a minute, energized joy, right?
Right.
And it didn't start out with purpose and on purpose. It started out with just, with the purpose of freedom, right? And building a brand like this can give freedom, and do those type of things. And that's really where it went. But yeah, we can choose those things, and we can, and it's like, just like you said, my joy is not an external thing, it's an internal piece. And the same thing for everybody in my family and people you come in contact with. I think it's the same Facebook user. They made another comment. Let's see how this, I think they often so angry that it becomes one with them. So they can't understand when people tell them they are angry. So people are like, it becomes part of their personality, right? Even Dispenza says that, right? He
Yeah.
says, like, if it becomes part of who you are, right? And it's just, you are angry all the time.
I really have compassion for that person on Facebook that's experiencing this. I'll give you a little bit of history about me and why this matters so much to me.
Mm-hmm.
My husband went through extreme depression, and then he masked it with alcohol. And if you want to talk about anger, oh my gosh, anytime he drank, this anger would come out, right? To me, it was anger, what I was feeling. And by the way, the man I'm going to talk about is not even on this earth anymore. He completely transformed through self-awareness. And how he became self-aware a lot was how I showed up in myself around him. Because I started, instead of matching, so I use this all the time, like his depression and anger were such a low vibration, like they were so low frequency, that I thought what compassion and empathy meant was to make him feel safe in that. So now look, now we're both in the shit.
Right. Yeah.
What I learned is, how can I stay in a high frequency, acknowledge that this is existing, but first off, this was a big deal in our marriage, because when I stayed here, it gave him somewhere to go that would serve us. But when I would join it, it felt like we were both not doing okay now. And then our house just felt not okay. So I had to learn, how do I maintain my own frequency when others show up around me that isn't that? Mm-hmm. What I had to do is only think and feel and take awareness of me. Now that is counterintuitive, because what we want to say is, your drinking and your depression is causing me this. And I did that for a couple of years, and it was killing me.
Yeah.
I had to finally say was, this depression and this alcohol exists, but I'm going to care more about how I feel than anything else in the world. And by me always caring about how I feel, and I had to reprogram my mind differently and reframe how I see things so I could truly shift the emotional response. Now, let me tell you how I did it. I woke up every day, and I love that you write things down, and I love that you meditate, and I constantly am a learner. Okay, those are the 3 things that got me through the hardest, deepest, lowest place in our lives. And how people can make that through still married, I don't think is common. But we did it, and the more I shifted, I would kind of start looking and going, wow, he's doing it too. He's doing it too. And I just worried. I just thought about me. Okay. And so I woke up every day, and I love that you say I'm so happy and grateful now that, because I start my daily affirmation every day that way. And I started writing down, I am so happy and grateful now that I feel good today. That's where I started, because I felt like I can't go for a quantum leap, because that feels like not real, and I'm just lying to myself, and I can't emotionally find that, right? So what can I emotionally find? I can feel good today. That's great. And luckily I am a very positive person, so I could, for me, I could reach that. So I'm so happy and grateful that I feel good today. I'm so happy and grateful that I have a thriving marriage. And I was like, oh, can I feel that? Well, I had seen the goodness in him, and so I could find that still, okay? And so I started writing that every day. And those were the 2 things I started with. And then I would sit there and I would write down gratitudes. And I'm like, okay, what am I grateful for? And I'd look around, and we lived in a beautiful home. Oh, it felt so safe. It felt good. My kids were safe. And I started in the beginning, except for this, this, and this, and this. And I just had to stop and just say, no, our home feels good, right? And I'd sit there, and I'm so grateful for my kids. And I would sit at that table till I could feel it, okay? And I could feel the gratitude. And then and for me, I started with 10, because that was, and by the way, sometimes this would take me an hour, because I disciplined myself to get into the emotion, because as we know we want a new future, we have to create from additional emotional, or a new emotional landscape. We have to get into our body to experience the emotion as though it's already happened, so that can happen. Remember, if you want to get into the science of it, go study Joe. There he is again. But we have to create a new emotion and experience the emotion, so what we want can come. That's the frequency, and that's the energetic match, right? So, and then after I would do that, then I would write down. So I've got my thought, I've got my feelings aligned. Now what am I going to do, right? So I wrote down 6 things that I was going to do that day, and be consciously aware, so I could be in complete alignment with what I wanted. So I was going to start saying yes more often. That sounds silly. A lot of people want to change your vibe. You want to change your opportunities. You want to change your job. You want to change the people you're around. Start saying yes to something new. Start saying yes, and getting into that habitual thought of saying yes, thank you, yes, thank you, right? I'm going to stay open to new opportunities. So that was like, because I'm going to live a new life, so new opportunities have to come to my new life, right?
Right.
I am going to smile at every single person that I encounter today. And by the way, that one was easy for me, but it made the biggest difference. People smile back to me, and now we're in this like higher vibe. We're in this better conversation because we're smiling, right? And then I eventually wrote down, I'm going to shine my light so bright that people that don't meet me can feel it.
Wow.
That's it. And those were the 4 main things that I was like, that one actually still takes my breath away, because think about what you're transmuting if you focus on your light, and how fast and how much energy and frequency is in light. Right? It's the fastest thing. So think about changing the world by just transmuting your own light.
Right.
So I wrote that down every single day. I did not miss a day. And then I started studying and listening to people that knew and had proven how to do this. This is where I learned about Joe Dispenza. This is where I learned about people talking about high frequency and high vibration. And then, by the way, this technology found me. That's how it found me, is through this energetic connection. And my whole life has changed. Every single thing in my life has changed. And including my thriving marriage. It's happier and thriving. And my husband absolutely doesn't even drink alcohol at all. Because again, oh, by the way, Scott, you mentioned frequency, and well, you didn't mention this, but I'm going to connect a dot. Food has frequency.
Right.
Everything has frequency. So healthy food adds a higher frequency in your body. Right? Alcohol has zero frequency. In fact, you can go study alcohol and what it does to the body, but alcohol has zero. So any high frequency inside your body, your light, it lowers it instantly.
Right.
So that one thought, my husband he won't even touch alcohol, right?
Right.
And other reasons, because he focuses on his vibe. Like, what's my vibe? I want to keep on my vibe. So anyway, those were the things that I did, and through that, my entire life changed, and everything came because I attuned to it.
Right. I'll tell you this about alcohol, and this is in my book, and this is my shameless plug to download my book for free at sleep.strongforlonger.com. And I did a portion on, it's called Putting Down Your Landing Gear, things you should stop doing and when before sleep, right? And so alcohol, 2 to 3 hours, alcohol is the number one sleep aid, right? It's what most people in America use to actually fall asleep. But do you know that moderate alcohol consumption within 2 hours of going to bed will disrupt your restorative sleep by 22%, and heavy alcohol within 2 hours of going to sleep will disrupt your restorative sleep by over 40%.
Scott, do you want to know what's a funny play on words?
What's that?
Alcohol puts humans to sleep. Okay. Physically or consciously.
Right.
When we consciously go to sleep with that type of aid, we can't be awake to the things that matter. Our consciousness is not awake. So that's saying everyone's waking up.
Right.
Waking up to themselves. Alcohol will keep you from yourself, period.
Yep. It's you know, I mean, I've been around alcohol a long time. I've had my struggles with it in my 20s. I didn't drink for a year and a half, and then I was able to get it under control. And you know, and that's really the great thing about having Saf Buxey on this Friday show, you know, talk about recovery, because of people in our industry that I've worked in for all those years. But and now from alcohol for me is more about the art of it, right? And understanding, you know, how the connection to the earth, and, you know, and like, you know, for instance, bourbon is going to, you're going to have corn grown in Kentucky. You're going to have the barrels made from a 75-year-old white oak tree. So you're getting a taste of Kentucky, right? When you, and, you know, with those things, ironically, you know, for someone who enjoys it and someone who's, you know, understands probably, I think I've managed a restaurant that had 450 beers from around the world. I know a lot about beer, right? I managed restaurants that had 600 different wines from around the world. I know a lot about wine. I managed a restaurant that had 1,100 whiskeys. I know a lot about whiskey and distilled spirits and those things, but I haven't had a drop, not a single drop, since New Year's Eve, right? And it was not a conscious thing. It wasn't like, this is going to be dry January or any of those things. It just, through the momentum of my life, right? The meditation, the hydration, understanding net hydration, how it makes you dehydrated, right? And all these different things, right? It's just not part of my life at this moment, right? It's not. Am I going to have some hot sake or some red wine or some Sauvignon Blanc or champagne at some point in the future? Yes, I am. I know I am, but it's just not something I do on the regular anymore. It's just not.
Well, I think you're building your self-awareness. And when self-awareness gets skewed by outside influence, you have to ask yourself, what is that exchange? And is it worth it? Right. So I think anybody who has a relationship that needs to be shifted, or what is your intention? It's trying to ask yourself those questions. And does this heighten my self-awareness so I can be the best possible version of me?
Right.
Or take away from that self-awareness and possibly add to the things I'm not enjoying in my life? And I think that's when you have to ask yourself and see what's right for you.
Exactly. So two things, right? I want to do before we wrap up the show, right? And I'm okay if we go over an hour. I don't know if you've got it. Yeah, I know you're stacked really today, so I don't know we'll see how this plays out. One is what you laid out earlier. What I think the blueprint for what we titled the show is how to bring your emotional guidance system online, where you talked about meditation. You talked about holding a frequency. You talked about writing down your actual affirmations every day, right? And I'm actually developing a program, an online training course called, the working title is called Power Mode On. Basically, how to live in your parasympathetic as much as you possibly can, right? And part of that is the reprogramming of your thoughts, right? Because of the Joe Dispenza, we think of this 95% of the same thoughts we did the day before. And all of a sudden Scott's waking up with a smile on his face versus dragging himself to the French press. I'm like, in 3 days, I was able to reprogram my feelings at waking up, right? Of being this like lethargic, slow out of the gate, night owl, crescendoing late into the night. I was able to wake up and start sprinting, right? So that's the first thing. I think that I just want to establish that way people can go back up, or if they're watching this and go, that's really, we delivered on the promise, right, of what the show was titled of. The second one is Debbie from Spirituality Gone Wild. And it's kind of a two-part thing here. She asked you a question, really, is how much is lost in text communication with the loss of tonality? She backed this up with with loss of tonality, I meant, right?
So what's really interesting about that, Debbie, is 7% is words. 7% of how you're communicating is words. Most people, I think it's 38% is tone.
Right.
And then the other is your body language. And what I would translate that to is your vibration. Like, what are people feeling, right? So it really is a lot about tone. So 38% is the way that you're saying it, but then your overall vibe about your delivering of that is what people are feeling. And that's really what is being communicated. So I think if we understand, like, it's funny, I'm just going to say this really interesting story since it's a couple days after Valentine's Day. Tone has been absolutely a struggle in most relationships, but especially in your marriage, right? I'll just talk about that. You're not consciously aware of your tone, then most of the time you're having conversations about not the same thing. I found myself responding to the feel, because I am a very emotionally connected person and a very emotionally aware person. So when you say I'm fine, and I can feel that that's not true, I feel deceived, or you're trying to deceive me, right? So I'm saying, wow, do we not have trust? You can tell me the truth, right? And that feels kind of deep, and maybe you would or wouldn't want to be married to me. But my goal in that was like, let's get more in alignment with who and what we really are. Let's have integrity with each other. So when I say, how are you feeling? I would like you to tell me the truth, because I want to be your partner. So we've been going through this for 15 years, by the way. We've been married for 15 years. And this Valentine's Day, we had the most incredible experience where we just connected. And very little words were said. It is the most connection I have felt in 50. Feeling everything he was thinking, and there was very little words happening. So I think if we concentrate or focus and have more conscious effort around our own internal alignment about the truth, then we will really have more trusting relationships. Because think about the vulnerability. If you said, actually, I'm kind of sad today. And it's not you. It's just something I'm feeling. I'm working through it. I'm asking myself what it is. But that's probably the truth.
Hmm.
I mean, think about that vulnerability in your relationship where now you'll be like, wow, thank you for trusting me. Thank you for trusting that we can have that conversation. And we don't need to pick it apart. But what we can say is, wow, I could feel that. So now I know that you're telling me the truth and we're building trust.
Hmm. Wow.
That
I told you. I told you in the email that I was looking forward to this show than more than any, I think, right? I mean, this has just been absolutely amazing. And I've been describing, I mean, all of that stuff about, the connection between you and your husband and how it's growing is just, I think that's the way it's supposed to be, right? And I commend both of you on the work that you've done, right?
Thank you. Thank you. It's been hard. I'll be the first one to say it's not been blue skies. And I always tell him, you're my greatest medicine.
Mm.
Because he has taught me more about myself than I think any human ever has. And what we've learned with our relationships, we're passing on to our kids. And it to me, that's how we change the world.
Right. Well, as it says in the Bible, iron sharpens iron, right?
Right.
And, and that's what it takes, right? It takes someone, if, I grew up, pretty, tough mindset, very competitive, racing go-karts, traveling, working really hard. It took a hard piece of iron to sharpen me, right? And you have to find that person that matches your vibration in a lot of ways, right? To do that. And it's absolutely amazing. One of the phrases I've been using lately is that to develop a ninja level self-awareness, right? Yes. And because I just got chills, right? So, right.
I love that. I absolutely love that.
Right. And so here's the thing, right? Vibeonix is a way of using modern technology to know when that emotion's coming through. My kids tell me this, like, Dad, your tone, right? It's not what you said, Dad, it's your tone.
Right.
Right. And, it may be something that stresses me, that stressed me in a different way. Right. And I found out when my son started learning to drive that even though that I've won multiple national and state championships racing go-karts, right, and have been driving since I was age 7 years old, I'm not the best teacher of driving because if I get a little scared of what's happening, the tone that comes out of me to him is not what I'm coaching him on. It freaks him out, right? And it was like, now he's 19 now, but it's not, so we're past that stuff. But it was like I wasn't the best because of the tone, right? And I remember this.
Nate,
Go ahead.
add your self-awareness. So you're gonna be human, right? You might have a tone that's like, but I did this with my children yesterday. I was like, actually, you know what, guys? What you're hearing is not yours. I just need a minute to come off of work. I just had a really upsetting conversation. Or something inside it, this is mine. And I am so sorry. That was not fair to you.
Right.
Kids are like, oh, thank you, Mom. And they're so forgiving. They're age 6 to 14. But if I take accountability for the energy I just brought into the room and say, this is mine, and apologize for when I do have those moments where I express in ways that isn't fair to the people around me, right? And I own it, take it back, and I own it and say, oh, I'm feeling this. I am so sorry that I just put that on you, and it's not yours, and I'm sorry.
Right.
Think about how healthy your conversations. By the way, now my husband and I, this is what our conversation sounds like. I'm feeling reactive. I know that it's my anger. So if I show up that way, I just want you to know I'm aware and I'm working through it. And he's like, wow, thank you for telling me. And then he can say, well, thank you. I'm also feeling reactive because I'm really confused right now.
Right.
And we like catch ourselves and like, how are we retraining our minds to show up differently and our body, right? Because normally our fights 10 years ago, we would be, oh my gosh, he would get upset. He would walk around and he would spew something out that would just totally crush me. I'd follow him around the house. Tell me what that means. I don't understand. Blah, 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 blah. And then we would just like bomb, like we were a bomb. And no wonder he went to drinking. No, just kidding.
Right.
But we really had these crazy explosive conversations. I'm a very passionate person. I do seek to understand, but he was not raised around that. He thought if you were asking questions, it's because you're questioning him. And I was like, and I wasn't raised that way. Questions meant more understanding. Questions to him meant you didn't trust. It took years to figure that out.
Right. Yeah.
We're going to change the way the narrative comes. And when we're feeling those emotions, like if I start to feel confused, I can say, hey, I'm feeling confused. I'm asking to seek to understand. Please help me shift my confusion into understanding. That's what I'm doing right now.
Right.
That's a conversation, right?
Yeah. The same thing in our relationship. You know, my wife asked a ton of questions. Her dad was an engineer, right? And so I asked questions. He had answers to the questions. And I grew up in a traditional, and she's from New York, right? And I grew up in a traditional Southern household where it was like you didn't question dad, right? It's just like you did what he said. If you didn't, you're going to get the belt, right? You know, it was just like you just followed it. So here I am playing out that pattern. You don't question me. This is the answer to the question. This is what I expect. Right. In the same way, I in the beginning, I managed restaurants that way. I did the same thing. Like, I'm the boss. This is what I say. Don't question me. Right. But one of the biggest breakthroughs for me were, one was David Bayer's work with Mind Hack. Right. He goes, if you're in a stressful or you're sympathetic, right, if you're living in he calls it there's two states of being, right? So there's a beautiful state and then a stress state, right? Or survival state. And he says 100% of the time your thinking took you there, right? Took you to this sympathetic, right? And if your thinking took you there, you have to think that if I think that is true, that the opposite could be true. And what is the opposite? And then find things to affirm what the opposite is. And, I was, my wife and I had an argument, right? And she interrupted me and I got all upset because I was just trying to tell her something. Right. And I'm driving down the road. I had my earbuds in and I was driving and we got off the phone. And so, wait a minute, I'm in a survival state. Why am I here? What is my thinking? Which is Brene Brown's really like, what is the story you're telling yourself, right? About this. Right. And so I said, and I went deep, right? Just driving down the road, which is what you said, right? I could think about this while I was driving a 6-speed gearbox, convertible Mini, right? Versus not having to think about every single thing. Right. And so I was thinking about this and I'm like, well, I'm the husband and I'm expect her to listen to what I have to say without interruption because those things. And I went, why am I so egotistical around this? Why am I so all of these things? Right. And I had 20 minutes later, I went through that whole process. I called her back and I said, I'm so sorry. This is what I was thinking. This is why I reacted this way. And I'm working on it. And I will do my best to get better at this. Right. And so.
I love that so much. And Scott, I commend you, by the way, saying I'm sorry or coming to that realization. That is self-awareness. And with more greater self-awareness and vulnerability, we can communicate differently.
Right.
I will say full circle from the title of what we're working on today is internal guidance system. Right. That emotion of frustration is that thing that can identify right then and there, my thinking is off.
Right.
Because I wouldn't be feeling frustrated if my thinking was aligned to happiness or love or acceptance, right? So I apologize. I have to go, but I have loved this conversation so much and appreciate it so much. And I delayed my next one a little bit, but Scott, I could talk to you all day long, and I commend the work you're doing and appreciate you having people on your show that can hopefully bring some nuggets of information and help people.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And so let's just wrap it up. Where can people find you online?
If you go to www.vibeonix.com, you can try our product. You can try it for 14 days free. And then I highly suggest you reach out to one of our guides that can take you through it, help you understand it, and really understand how everything is so interconnected. So you can start to observe your emotions rather than wear them around like a shirt or wear them around like that's who you are. Just start observing them to have a better and greater understanding and changing that relationship with them.
Right.
Also, we are working with many companies and corporations, coaching organizations to use our product to have that objective assessment ready to go and help people with their emotional landscape. Also on LinkedIn, if you want to contact me personally, that's the best place.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll just make one last Dispenza quote. I heard him say this on Arby Marcus's podcast. He goes, once you start observing your feelings, your emotions, you can be outside the jar, right? I love that, like outside the jar, right?
And it starts like, if I'm feeling some resistance, that's how I say you're either in flow or resistance. If I'm feeling resistance, just pause. Just pause and think about your relationship. If you're like, I'm going to pause for a minute because I'm feeling some anger and I don't want to feel this way, but it's telling me that what I'm thinking right now does not serve us. I mean, think how powerful that is in your marriage or relationships or even at work. I actually happened to me this morning. I said, hey, I'm feeling a little confrontational, a little bit of confrontation in our tone and in the way it feels right now. Can we pause? And then she was like, yes. And I'm like, does that feel true to you? And she's like, actually, yes, it does. I feel like, and then she told me how she was feeling. I was like, my gosh, I'm so sorry. That is not how I feel. Can we start over and on a different, can we begin differently? And so we can continue to trust each other in this conversation.
Right.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Right. Well, we'll have to do another show about how maybe that works differently for men and women and things like that too, right? All that stuff, right?
We have a lot of data around that. I'd be happy to have another conversation, Scott. You're a delight.
Oh, thank you very much. Go run to your next one, and go ahead and log off, and I'll take it from here, right? If you want to do that. Thanks again. We'll connect later this week, right?
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you for coming on the show, Kristi. All right. Scott Stanfield here, the Modern Longevitarian. Thank you for everybody for all the comments today during the show. It was super, super fun. How to bring your emotional guidance system online. I mean, there's a blueprint inside this show. Just back it up, replay it, share this with somebody who you know possibly gets emotionally hijacked, who has, if you can relate to any of the stories that we told about how you don't realize that, maybe asking questions is a way to get more information and somebody else sees that as a way of questioning them, right? Or if you don't like surprises, good or bad, right? We see them as problems, right? Because you were trained that way somewhere as a child. So the show's is bumping on probably number 1 or number 2 for the longest episode ever for a live show here from Modern Longevitarian. I'm going to wrap it right here. Again, my name is Scott Stanfield. Tune in tomorrow for our live cooking show. We're going to be featuring and showcasing some plant-based cheeses, dairy products. And so here we go. We're going to wrap it up. The audio is probably breaking up right now, so I can see it happening. Again, Scott Stanfield, episode 84, Modern Longevitarian. Visit my website, strongforlonger.com. Cheers.